Showtime, it's showtime, it's showtime, it's showtime, it's showtime, it's showtime. Are we already live? Hi. La la la.
What's up?
Hi guys. Welcome to the latest episode of Cinema Bias. It's your new favorite show. I'm one of your co-hosts, VideoDrew. Whenever you dance, I get very worried that means my screen has frozen. But this is our other co-host.
I'd say no frozen screens or anything over here. I'm just like dancing because I can, That's how I dance when I sexy dance,
Sexy. So that's if you can't tell because she's sexy dancing, that's our other co-host, Alex Mack. Together we create Cinema Bias. It is a show where we force each other to watch, and you guys along with us. You force us to get outside of our comfort zone in films and make us sort of directly or indirectly face our subconscious biases that we have against certain kinds of films and make us watch things that are in our blind spots. This week is something that I hold near and dear to my heart that Alex, I'm assuming, really hated. But before we get into that, guys, if you have any donations or suggestions or tips, please send them to streamlabs.com/VideoDrew, because if you do it, well, I'll be able to add it into the stream and it'll be like, and then the whole little thing will go on. Remember that thing? That will work. That's how we're figuring it out. Mm-hmm. Drew looks rested, says Vernon. I am rested. By the way, thank you guys for caring. I was very sick the past couple days, but now I'm back better than ever. So we are going into this week. Whoa. Oh, what? Oh, I hear like a weird noise on my end.
Oh, Lucas is like doing the vacuum or something upstairs. I can let him know. What? Hold the phone.
Yeah, no problem. I'll bring her off for a second and just I'll just vamp. So guys, this will be like the making up for the time we did Who Framed Roger Rabbit and I just disappeared for 20 minutes. We're going to be doing Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which is a film that I love a lot. It's by Tim Burton. We're going to see how Alex felt about it. My guess is not great. I never know she found some things creepy, but hey. So, real quick, why don't we get started on this, which is, Alex, what is your bias against Pee-wee's, Pee-wee as a person and also the 1985 film Pee-wee's Big Adventure?
It's kind of funny because diving into this movie, my mom actually came over to drop up some apricot jam while I was in the middle of watching this movie. And I mentioned what movie I was watching for the first time. And she's like, and she's like, oh, God, I'm so sorry. And I was like, what? And I was like, really? You hate it? And I was like, and she was like, yeah, that movie's the worst. I can't stay in that movie. And I was like, and she's like, yeah, it's weird, it's gross. Pee-wee is such a weird character. It's so gross, the visuals. And I was like, that's all the reasons I hate it. Did I just absorb this bias from my mom?
Well, it's funny you say that. It's really funny you say that because, again, I came up from a background where I thought like we really loved Pee-wee growing up in my household. However, I was talking to my mom today.
And she's like, yes.
Sorry. I was talking to my mom today, and she was all like, I hate Pee-wee. She's like, what are you talking about? That guy's gross. He's creepy.
Yeah.
Like he's like a child molester or something. And I was like, no, let's get it right. Pee-wee was not a child molester, or the actor, neither, blah, blah. It's a whole separate thing. But basically, the creepiness of Paul Rubens is not the kind of creepiness that's, it's the same kind of creepiness of like a Fred Willard, where they got caught doing something kind of gross in a location that was meant for that specific thing. So it's not like a Harvey Weinstein situation. But I get how just uncanny valley people find Pee-wee. People like really just don't like Pee-wee Herman.
I don't think it's just Pee-wee Herman. I think it's this world that Tim Burton created. There's actually a lot of little moments that actually was surprised at how much I enjoyed. The setting I thought was really cool. It almost feels like an alternate reality, very obviously very Burton-esque. It felt like a very dream world, which I appreciated. And there was a handful of individual scenes that I have seen prior to going into this. And so thinking of those scenes that I've seen growing up, I was like, well, based off those scenes alone, I am absolutely going to hate this movie. This movie's going to be the worst movie ever,
right?
Whatever it might be. And don't get me wrong, I don't like it. But at the same time, I don't hate it as much as I thought.
Well, before we get into specific scenes and thing, maybe, because I think this one's actually harder than I thought it would be. We're going to give you a minute to describe the plot of Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah, go for it. Okay.
This might be very easy. That might be very easy or very, very hard. But let's put a minute on the clock and let's ready, set, go.
Okay, so it's about this 80-year-old child man person. He loses his bike while his very precious bike that is a lot of people are very jealous of, and it's some kind of random Tim Burton-esque town, essentially, and it's all of his adventures and trying to find it. So he ends up, he goes to a psychic that gives him he's like, Alamo, it's an Alamo, and he's like, Texas, right? So he tries hitchhiking over to Texas.
30 seconds.
He ends up getting picked up by a hitchhiker. He goes to his dinosaur park where he meets a cool waitress who's obsessed with Paris. Then he ends up somehow getting involved. He ends up going over to Hollywood where he sees a bike. He ends up getting the bike where they're inspired by his story of his main goal to achieve it. And a lot of people end up being inspired by his story. They make it into a movie. The bike ends returned to him by the very end of the movie.
Oh, good. Pretty good. Pretty good, man. Wait, let's go back for a second, though. Sorry that my sound cue is definitely Pennywise's music cue when my timer's up. So let's go back. What did you say he was? He was an 80-year-old man-child? What do you mean?
80-year-old man-child, yes.
80? Like 80? Yeah. Where'd you get that from?
I don't know. I just whipped out a number. There's aspects of him is very old-fashioned. Like the way he dresses is very old-fashioned. But there's like a slight edge to it. There's like a childlike innocence to it. Like his pants is too short. His bow tie is on perfectly straight, but it's too small. It seems like it would be a tie that a child would wear. Yeah. Things like that. So
his relationship to women is very interesting. He like has crushes. Like he almost has like a 12-year-old boy's relationship to women
and with other children and adults in general. So I mean, based off that, it almost feels like there's a. I wasn't sure if it's like there's like this. He might be like this just town understanding of his situation, where if he's like. My first thought was like, oh, is he like on the spectrum potentially, or something along those lines? Where he's clearly smart, but he does have that childlike innocence as far as like understanding, like establishing connections, where he understands some things but not all things. And just the way he's able to kind of weasel himself out of things, but also he is very intelligent, not only with how he's able to really kind of weasel his way out of things.
Using the word weasel. I'm interested.
I stand by it. He's a weaselly guy.
We're gonna go into this. The psychology of this weasel.
Exactly. But also the way he, like everything, like he does a lot of these. The way he prepares his breakfast is with this like crazy breakfast making contraption where there's a doll thing flipping pancakes, and the way he cracks an egg, they use toys and everything. The way he feeds his dog is all through that, and he is like, oh, mixed breakfast kind of thing, and everything's very childlike. But at the same time, there is a very conscious intelligence, obviously, the way he goes about his patterns throughout the day.
Sorry, that was not supposed to be there. I 100% agree with you. I think the thing about Pee-wee that we should remember is this was before Pee-wee's TV show. So this was like before anybody knew who Pee-wee was. This was just the beginning of what we'd go on to learn as the sort of the experiment. Sorry, it's bringing it down again. As the sort of performance art experience of Pee-wee Herman. Who again, this was like also the directorial feature-length debut of Tim Burton, and you can see a lot of Tim Burton stuff. You can see 1985. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that we're seeing in like the Tim Burton world. This movie is not supposed to be scary, but it has some very, very scary imagery in it that we'll later learn is like, that we now identify as like Burton-esque tropes. There's like the clowns, but I also think that there's this sense here of like why Burton chose this movie. So like think about it in a little context. Why this character? Why this movie for Burton's debut? And it's sort of this idea that Paul Rubens was a performance artist who had this character Pee-wee that he had done on like some variety shows, and that at the time Burton was working for Disney. He had done Fox and the Hound. He had been part of Disney's animation team, and he left Disney after Frankenweenie, which was then a short, and he was looking for a full length thing to do. He liked Pee Wee Herman. He liked the character. He got involved with Phil Hartman, who co-wrote the script.
Mm-hmm. He also makes a nice little cameo at the very end.
At the end, it's like a pretty, like, you can see if you're from LA, you'll notice every single location thing in this. This is his first directorial debut, so it's also his first directorial collaboration, full-length collaboration with Danny Elfman. But you're going to hear, like, I mean, it is the most Danny Elfman-y soundtrack,
But at the same time, it's this is like the first film that Danny Elfman, he actually composed a score for, and listening to it, I can almost sense that, especially comparing to a lot of his later works. And I was doing research on like the music, and Danny, the first time he actually did not only just move, because he worked on like small projects and stuff before, but he never worked with like an orchestra before. And he did for the first time for this movie. And he was like, he said it was one of the best experiences of his life, being able to hear his music, played by an orchestra for the first time.
I almost wish that we could like put up any of this music, but like we can't because
I know.
Because we'll get in so much trouble. This isn't karaoke. But real quick, who did the song Tequila that plays so prominently? I had it written down at one point, but like it's somebody from the 1950s, like really old song. It's like literally one of the oldest. I feel like one of the older songs.
It's by the Champs.
The Champs. I was about to say the Platters, but no, it's the Champs.
It's always the noun.
Did you notice? There were so many great cameos in this film. Did you notice the band that was in the back lot at the end that was on top of the car putting on a music video? It was Twisted Sister.
Oh, Twisted Sister. What's her place that played Elvira? Is it Elvira? With the blonde, with boobs and the dark hair and everything.
Elvira had dark hair.
She was. I know she was like Mistress of Evil kind of thing. I know she was like she's called the Biker Mama on IMDb.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember seeing her and I was like, "You look familiar. Your smile looks familiar."
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
she has that smile, which is incredibly iconic. Not just.
Well, it's funny enough because, like, this is such a great scene. Let's see. I was gonna say this is also like a movie that it stands so alone. It's so strange, and it's so like, how is this like? Of course, it's the first Burton film. Like we think of Burton now, and we're thinking of like Dumbo and Charlie and or Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and all this stuff. But it's like,
there she is.
That Elvira? I'm not sure if that's Elvira.
Look her up.
Okay. Cassandra Peterson. Yeah, she's the one that says yeah, okay. Man, I just didn't recognize her. So, I mean, like, there's so many scenes in this that you're like, what kind of movie is this? Is this a kid's movie? Is this, like, for adults? Like, there's, like you said, there is some kind of creepiness to Pee-wee that is sort of a man-child thing. The funniest thing that I think is that it's a retelling of the Bicycle Thief. It was not Bertolucci. It's not Godard. It's Truffaut. Is that who did Bicycle Thief? So it's a retelling of a famous European movie.
If you're not familiar with that story, it's a super old classic Italian movie that was made in like the 60s, like the 50s or 60s, I want to say, but it's been remade in a bunch of different versions.
Yeah, it's the idea of like, what kind of movie is this? Would it fall under coming of age? I was debating this with somebody earlier. Was this a coming of age movie? Because it sort of is. I mean, it's just a weird age. Or is this is this a road trip movie? Is this sort of a recovery of lost item? Is it a mystery? Is it a like? There's so many weird things that I find Pee-wee's Big Adventure to be sort of genreless. Like it falls outside a typical genre film, or like it's really hard to pin down for what it is. Because it's just so weird. And Warner Brothers thought this movie was so weird. They decided like it was so weird that they were gonna like roll this film out like regionally. So instead of having a big marketing push about like Pee-wee's Big Adventure coming out and like to theaters everywhere, they were like, like let's just roll it out to like little cities, almost do like test screenings, and then it proved popular with a limited audience, and then cranked up the publicity, made it a bigger thing, and it got 41 million at the box office, which is pretty cool because it was made for like 7 million. So that's like that was a huge win and allowed Burton to go on to make like, Batman, and,
I'm sorry, I just realized that I'm frozen in the screen.
Oh, you are?
I've been frozen for like the last like minute and a half, apparently.
Oh no.
And I'm just noticing it. Because I have the other page.
You're back.
Oh, no, I'm not. No, I'm not.
You're back.
Oh, wait. I moved a little bit. Guys, tell me, have I moved in the other screen in the past like 2 minutes? Can you tell me? Can you tell that I'm doing the robot?
Sean, in the back end. Sean, can you put in the private chat like what's going on? Can you write it down so we can? Sean's like giving us frantic hand gestures, but I don't know what that means.
Oh, there it is. It just went, I think. Yes.
Let's see.
Okay. Oh, sweet baby Jesus. Sorry.
Somebody was saying, let's see.
Well, I'll say, going back a little bit, what was so did you grow up loving this movie? I know you said your mom didn't love it, but I mean, like, did you grow up loving Tim Burton in general? Or is it this movie in particular that really grabbed you because it hit you at a certain time or anything?
Don't love this movie. I think that should like be something that is weird about me. I was not, what I really loved is Pee-wee's Big Top Adventure, the sequel. I really loved. This is one of those weird movies where like I really loved the sequel to this film and not so much the original. I feel like I found the original too dark and too weird growing up. Like there was nothing about it that seemed very like appealing as a kid, like to a kid. I remember definitely certain parts of it. Alex is moving. But I don't know that I loved this movie. I just think that if you're going to be talking about, some seminal movies that you have to have seen to have a really good film education, Pee-wee's,
yes.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure needs to be one of them. The bike, I mean, like everything about it. It has so many iconic lines. There's so many cameos. There's so many things that we now reference without realizing we're referencing this movie. Like, the Alamo, like there's no basement at the Alamo, or even Au revoir Simone, which is the name of a pretty big band that maybe it's just a big deal to me because it's the name of a band that David Lynch uses. But it's just really great, and I think there's a ton here, guys. We do have a special guest though, who I do believe this person's favorite movie is
favorite movie. That's a bit much. No, it can't be his favorite movie.
Because we already had James Bond be his favorite movie. We do have back on as a guest, Tim Franco.
Oh man, look at that! Look at that gorgeous kitchen. Can we just take a minute to like applaud that kitchen?
Yeah, that's an amazing kitchen.
My iMac is set up in here, and I was like, I don't feel like doing this on my MacBook, so I'll just do it here.
That's fair.
That's fair. I'm trying to see if this looks better or this looks better. Nope. Looks better
this way. This is my favorite movie.
Really?
Of all time?
Of all time.
Huh. Explain. Like, give us some context. What
just because, like, no, I'm not saying it's like the best movie of all time. So that's completely different lists. But when I think of like a movie that I could just throw on at any time, a movie that I've loved since like, it's probably the first movie I remember like loving as a kid and continuing to love. It's the movie that I know back and forward more than any other movie. I could probably literally quote the script because I know the movie so well. Mm-hmm. I love the soundtrack. I think it's got a great soundtrack by Danny Elfman. Early Danny Elfman. It's a really cool, kind of weird, quirky soundtrack, like all of his stuff is, but like, just like fits this movie.
But it's especially this. Let's be honest.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. It's just got so many like just iconic things. I mean, I love the large Marge has always been a thing. The dinosaur clown dream. The Cabazon dinosaurs. Growing up, every time I would drive to California, I would either think of Pee-wee's Big Adventure or the movie The Wizard, which is the other movie that features those.
Oh, with the glove, the kid with the glove.
Yeah. So there's those two movies growing up that were associated with the El Cabazon dinosaurs, which is now a creationist museum.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I did want to ask Alex before we jump into some other parts of this. What did you think of the large Marge scene?
I've seen that scene individually, specifically before. It has been a few years, but I knew it was coming. The moment I saw it, where he was like, "Oh, he's being picked up by a trucker. I knew it was large Marge. It did. I remember seeing it when I remember seeing it for the first time. It never really scared me, like the surprise factor. It just made me uncomfortable. It just like made like Pee Wee Herman as a character makes me uncomfortable. Like he's not a character I actively want to be around. He's not. It's not a character that just his voice. It just like makes me physically uncomfortable. But that, I mean, like in the real world, it's a very different conversation. But in this world where there's like a weird fantasy element and everything, it makes me more uncomfortable, and I don't like it.
So even within this world where he's sort of innocuous or banal, or he's just part of this weird world that already exists, you still find him unlikable or undealable.
The large Marge sequence. What's interesting about that is that whole scene was designed by the Kyotos brothers, who went on to direct Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Great movie.
And they've done a lot of the effects for like Critters. They did a lot of the like claymation effects in Elf. They did if you've seen this movie, it's a bad movie, but I have a hot
wait. They've done they did the things for Elf. Did they do any Nightmare? No, that was Henry Selick. But did they do any of the animation for Corpse Bride or any of the what's the name?
Weenie or anything?
I don't believe so. The only other thing I remember them doing that's more recent was it's a bad movie, but I like it because it's so bad. But they did the mouse, like all the mouse dioramas from Dinner with Schmucks with Paul Rudd and Steve Carell.
Wait. These are all like movies I hate.
Wait, I'm pretty sure the guy who directed Pee-wee's Big Top also directed Dinner with Schmucks, unless I'm crazy.
Oh, you're probably right. I jumped in as you were talking about that. I also really love Big Top Pee-wee as well. So
I mean, Big Top Pee-wee I'd like a lot because it's the idea of Big Top Pee-wee. Oops, look, we got a super chat coming in, so I don't want anyone's screen to freeze, but don't freak out, guys. Vernon donated $5. Thank you for your donation, Vernon. Pretty soon we're gonna be able to. Vernon's the
man. I love Vernon.
Pretty soon we're gonna be able to incorporate Streamlabs. I've heard very easily pretty soon, so that's gonna be awesome. That way we won't need to bring up the second screen. But what I love about the Big Top specifically is it gives you the idea that Pee-wee is like not part of that world. Like that town in that movie, the town hates Pee-wee.
Oh yeah,
like he's like the outsider, and that feels a lot more correct for maybe what this character should be. He should be like an outsider. He shouldn't be someone who's like beloved by this whole neighborhood, except for this really rich, like douchey kid.
I like to think that Pee-wee used all the money he made from the big studio making his life story into a movie to go buy a farm and live on a farm and annoy all the town people.
Yeah, so this is like never ending story for me. This is like a lot of weird movies or like Terminator 2, where I've seen the sequel, maybe never seen the original, and it's really weird. It's like a really weird thing about it. And then when I went back and watched the original of Pee-wee and I was watching it today, I was like, I'm not sure how this movie holds up for me. It is very strange. The narrative of it should fit like a not a heist movie, but it should fit like a road trip movie. And yet it feels like there's a lot of like weird starts and stops. There's a lot of him coming in contact with characters, and it's kind of this zany madcap romp thing. But it also, the pacing of it feels very strange. Like they spend a lot of time in one place, but not the other. And like why he's like at the Alamo is because he's chasing down this psychic thing. But then how the bike ended up on a movie screen is just like sort of this other silly thing. And it's both like playful, but also like it's a little strange. It's a very much a directorial debut, I would say.
It is very strange. I mean, the interesting thing too, like this movie. So when he originally was originally brought into write, like to make a movie, Pee-wee that is, his original idea was to remake his favorite movie of all time, which is Pollyanna.
Oh my god!
This originally started off as a remake of Pollyanna. Yeah, it's like a movie from like the 1960s with Haley Mills, where she's like this bratty little kid. Pollyanna's great.
His favorite movie of all time?
Apparently. And so he originally was brought in to write that, and he had started on it, But then when he was like walking around Warner Brothers, he noticed that everyone was like using bikes to get around, and so he changed it to being a story kind of centralized around a bike story and like losing his bike.
I do have to say that I love the Warner Brothers stuff. I do think that's really cute.
It's great. And having been there like multiple times, I love like going there and like being like, yeah, this is where they did this and this is where they did that, and it's great.
That's well, I have to say, but not gonna lie, that bike is so cool. I would love to have that bike.
Hey guys, that'd be a great question one day. Like, what make and model is that bike? Like that.
What make and model?
Or sort of what year, and what model bike is that?
Do they have a close up of that?
Yeah, it's a 1950 Schwinn. It's
a Schwinn. Yeah, I didn't know the year or anything like that, but
I think it's.
I know it's the best bike. I know it's the best bike in the whole world.
It is the best bike in the whole world. I remember as a kid really wanting this bike. I think this thing with the nun. I was watching this with a friend of mine. I guess I can say what friend it is. It's my friend Lon Harris. Maybe you guys know him. He's the delinquent. I just like name checking the fact that he's my friend. We were watching and he thought one of the funniest parts was like this little moment where Pee-wee steals the bike as the nun and he's like, oh, I need the bike for something like on set. And the director goes and like checks the notes of the script to like make sure that wasn't something that was in the script. Like this small moment where the director's like, huh? He like looks down, he like checks with the script girl and he's like, is that something that's supposed to happen? Just like a little minor moment. Because
I'm going to start a paper out right now.
Exactly. It's just like improving.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
There was what I thought was kind of interesting when he was like running away. He started off in that scene being the nun. So this is like where it's a little more of a traditional, maybe a little more of a conservative movie, maybe something with a slightly religious undertone, but with like this asshole kid. I can't remember who is like, but it was supposed to be Corey Feldman apparently. That was supposed to be that kid, but he was in the middle of filming Goonies.
Wait, Corey Feldman as the guy
the annoying kid in the movie.
Oh, you mean like the one that was played by the guy from the Wonder Years, the brother?
Yes.
That's Kevin.
Yeah, but it was supposed to be Corey Feldman, but he couldn't because he was just wrapping up the Goonies. But anyway, but it's kind of funny where he steals that movie. When he like runs away from that scene. So it almost feels like he's almost like making a slight meta commentary on Hollywood studio making decisions. Where it's like, this is the kind of movie that you guys are supposed to see by the theaters. This is what they're making. Has this like this is where it's kind of like this slight religious undertone. Everyone is white and blah, blah, blah. It's a traditional story.
James Brolin and Tim Burton.
That's amazing. I'm not gonna lie, that's most inspired casting. But later, he's like going through like a Godzilla set where it feels like that's like where it seems like him going through is like saying, "This is a movie you should also see instead of that one. You should go see this one." You know,
maybe I think there's a lot of different interpretations to what's going on in that studio scene where he's going across the studio lot. Apparently, there was a big issue between him and Kevin Smith, where because of Jay and Silent Bob's. Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, I guess, where they're going through the studio lots at the end of the movie, or like during part of the movie. Tim Burton was like, "Hey, you stole that from me. Like, you absolutely just stole that from Pee-wee's Big Adventure." And then Kevin Smith was like, "Oh, really? Because like, here's this part of I forget what it was. Kevin Smith said that he had written a comic which had like an ending for maybe Batman or." Wasn't Batman or another movie that he said that Tim Burton Planet of the Apes, where he's like, you totally stole my Planet of the Apes idea. What it really goes back to is the idea that Tim Burton and Kevin Smith were supposed to make that Superman movie together,
right?
With Nicolas Cage, and that project never fell through. So now I guess they're just constantly bickering at each other about who stole
bad blood between them.
Yeah, but I do think that's really funny that the idea of like going through a studio lot, going through these different genres, like there's the Tarzan movie. There's the, there's the Godzilla movie. There's like the flying nun kind of thing that's going on.
There's like the beach, like the Christmas beach movie.
There's a Twisted Sister like music video.
Yeah, Twisted Sister, Burn in Hell. It is just there's so much going on, and I do feel like it is an indictment of both like this Hollywood system, as well as sort of this maybe like a love of it too, like a love of this thing. Because he is coming from Disney. Disney was in a dark place in the 80s. Disney was not doing so great.
They were almost bankrupt by the late 90s. And thank heavens Little Mermaid happened.
Mhm.
That was like one of their only saving graces for like a decade.
But, like,
I do.
Tim Burton was part of that bad. He was part of that bad period. Like he was part of that period of Fox and the Hound, and he was part of that animation studio that wasn't producing stuff that was considered viable. So yeah, I mean, I just think it's really interesting to see both his love of movies and also him just being like, it does kind of feel like an FU Disney movies or FU kids movies or like FU studio movies a little bit.
It's kind of funny every time in a movie they're going behind, like if there's any kind of scene where there's a TV show, movie, music video, whatever it might be, and they're going to like Warner Brothers Studios or whatever studio. There's always like a lot of people in like different, like costumes, like soldiers and can girls, or like people in like
Francis,
Greek robes and stuff. But there's always people like women in the Las Vegas girls with the like feather hats and like the dancers and everything. I can't think of 10 movies where they are in it. Oh yeah, yet they're always in those scenes. Always.
It's a Ziegfeld Follies reference.
Yeah,
there's the Bugsby Berkeley movies of the 1940s, 50s, like those big Bugsby Berkeley musicals where they'd be coming out of the water.
A Footlight Parade.
That makes sense.
Was something on Broadway? 42nd on Hail Caesar like made reference to that too, like the dancing girl. It was something on Broadway, Ziegfeld and Follies. It's just that kind of look, which was supposed to, again, I think make this movie look very anachronistic. Like there's a lot of this. I love the Mr. T cereal, which might be the only thing that really points you into a place in time for when this movie takes place. Because the rest of this movie could be taking place in the 1950s, it could be taking place in the 1970s, it could be taking place in the 80s. Unless you guys feel differently. I mean, that's the only.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else really. I think that's probably the main giveaway, really.
Well, I do think the fashion of people around him make it look very 80s to me. But I feel like, I mean, that's going to happen inevitably, just like the makeup styles and, whatever maybe. But I think what's also like very specific is, what's very Burton-esque about it is I think Burton was definitely inspired by Pee Wee Herman, not only as a character, but the thing is the production design as well. We look at the production design and setting and everything, it's very Burton-esque. But like 90% of the stuff at his house, a lot of the weird stuff he kind of carries with him and all the toys and everything, that was all a majority, heavy majority of it was actually Paul Rubens' own collectibles. So he pretty much went in and he like set up the room up himself. And I feel and I'm really curious to think if Tim Burton looked at this kind of like a setup that Paul Rubin created for Pee-wee, and he's like, this is my thing. I like this. I'm taking it for a lot of other movies now.
I mean, what's really funny is when you look at it, I had this similar thought where I was like, did he do the production design of this? But like you actually notice, like it doesn't actually hit the parts of it that look like Burton stuff is not the parts of it that are Pee-wee's own life. Like I think like if you go to like the earlier shots where he's like in the magic store and stuff like that, and you see a poster in the background for who is it? It's the guy from the character from the TV show, the Magnificent Floating Head dude. Like you can see like a Pee-wee character.
Zombie.
Zombie, yeah, you can see a Zombie poster in the background.
Zombie's in the movie. The guy that plays Zombie. There's a lot of Pee-wee's Playhouse people in the movie.
Yes,
right. And Pee-wee's Playhouse existed as a separate, like, alternate separate thing than the Tim Burton stuff existed.
Well, yeah, he did this. He first did this HBO special that was not for children at all.
To me, all of it looks like Pee-wee Herman / Burton. Honestly, it does.
But like, I think later on it starts looking very Burton-y. Like the clown sequence is very Burton-y. This is actually missing a lot. This is missing a lot of what I consider Burton, which is like it's missing the stripes. It's missing a sort of distorted camera view. I think like when I think of the difference between this and let's say Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, or sorry, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which the recent one, where it's sort of like what do the machines look like in that versus the machines that look like in the beginning of this movie. Like it's very clear that it's not the same. It's not the same kind of look to it. So I just.
I do agree with you there as far as it doesn't have a lot of the strength, but as far as like costume design, I feel like it is very Burton-esque. incredibly so. Everything is very textured. Everything is very thick materials. I mean, looking at his suit, it looks like it's like a thicker material. When Pee-wee dresses up as the feminine version of himself, she wears like a textured like teal sweater dress thing. That's true. That's true. The inmate, he wears like a denim suit, so everything looks like everything is very textured and has that kind of specific feel to it, which I feel like is very consistent throughout all of.
I think, maybe he was very inspired by it. Like again, like I think Burton had done, for the most part, Burton had been doing animated stuff. So like this is like Burton working within the real world, working within like, you know, him taking some shots, and he might have been very inspired by what Paul Rubens was doing, what Pee-wee was doing. When I think of that opening shot of what's going on with the Rube Goldberg devices in terms of making breakfast and stuff, I'm thinking I don't know. I feel like it's when I look at that, and then I look at Edward Scissorhands, and I look at the Rube Goldberg devices used in Edward Scissorhands, it's very clear that like he was very inspired by what Paul Rubens was setting up and Paul Rubens was doing in his stage show. And I actually don't have an answer about like how much of this was Tim Burton's prop design, how much of it was something Paul Rubens brought over, an aesthetic that Paul Rubens brought over from the Pee Wee Herman show that he'd been putting out, or his his special that he'd put out.
Well, if it's considered like this was his debut, you know, maybe it's not as Burton-esque as some of his later movies, like such as Edward Scissorhands and, you know, Beetlejuice and all that good stuff. But I do have a question for you, Tim. This is his first movie, obviously, feature-length debut as a director. What if this wasn't his first film? What if hypothetically he ended up doing something like just like another, what if he ended up doing Kramer versus Kramer? Like, can you imagine what we would have from him as a director now? Or if he just somehow ended up being the Oscar-winning director behind Ordinary People?
Or I think a good way of phrasing it is something that might be very relatable is, what if he had gone on to keep working with Disney Animation? What if he had gone on to Pixar? What if Tim Burton's thing had been to do Toy Story?
To stay in just the animated realm.
Because that actually tracks, is that he was on a Disney animation track that was part of like this very it was like avant-garde Disney animators during this weird tumultuous time in that thing. So like, what would it look like to think of Tim Burton movies as like, you know, Toy Story?
Well, and two, I mean, this movie was a success. So because of the success of this movie, he went on to do Beetlejuice basically next. And then because of the success of Beetlejuice and Pee-wee, that's what got him Batman. So then he just kind of took off from there. You know, he was kind of cemented into that more live action, you know, genre going forward essentially. But
to Alex's point, if he had done like dramas and something, I think the closest equivalent of what it would look like would be something like Big Eyes, like the one that he did.
And that's a great movie.
Yeah, or Big Fish too.
People don't really talk about it enough when people talk about their favorite Burton movies. That's like, and that is like legitimately a good movie, not just because it's, you know, Burton and everything, but
there wasn't an Oscar. Am I crazy?
Sorry,
wasn't it nominated? I don't remember. It may have gotten some. I
do know it got some nominations for some Golden Globes, but I don't think he got any kind of recognition for at the Oscars or anything, unfortunately.
Look at that bike.
Look at that sexy bike. It even has like a little area for storage, you know. It's so smart.
Which I think growing up, one of the funniest things about this movie, like as I got older and rewatching older versions of the movie, because now going forward, like Blu-ray, like for a while now, they've had versions of the movie that have kind of like cleaned it up and cut out a lot of the blatant, like you can tell like stuff is like showing on camera that shouldn't show on camera. So one example of that is when he's pulling the chain for locking his bike out of the storage compartment. In earlier cuts of the movie, you can see the bottom of the storage compartment, and you can see the chain being fed through that and coming up for him to like pull it out. So it's just being fed through it. It's not even like stored in there.
I think like another thing to note about about Tim Burton's iconography is that he did Warner Brothers pretty much exclusively for the first three or four films, right? It was like after Pee-wee, they were like, we love that you put us in the movie, so let's go ahead. So let's do Beetlejuice, let's do Batman. Then they took a break off. do Edward's. No, they took a break off to do Edward Scissorhands, which is right. Which Edward Scissorhands is 20th Century Fox, and then they went back for Warner Brothers. They did Ed Wood somewhere else. Mars Attacks was Warner Brothers. Like Charlie and Chocolate Factory, Corpse Bride was Warner Brothers. Dark Shadows, like he really stuck with Warner Brothers. Besides like Warner's Brothers and like some Walt Disney stuff, that's basically been what he's been about, and that's kind of interesting because I can't think of like another director who really screams Warner Brothers to me. Besides
Studio?
Warner Brothers, like
Nolan with Warner Brothers.
Sorry.
Christopher Nolan is, I think, as far as I can remember, he's almost exclusively done Warner Brothers movies.
I guess when I think of what Warner Brothers, like like what they stand for. When I think of like Animaniacs, or like what Warner Brothers like ethos is, I think of like Tim Burton-y kind of movies.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I'm off by that. Maybe if anyone else has any suggestions about that. Chris Nolan. Somebody else is saying Chris Nolan. Does Chris Nolan like scream Warner Brothers though? I mean, like maybe
I think it is, as far as like when it comes to edgy, not only just edgy filmmaking, but it's very
Batman-y?
It's very existentialist. He's one of those directors where he's kind of like Fincher a little bit. I actually prefer Fincher a little bit more to Nolan. But if you're going into a Christopher Nolan movie, I don't need to see a trailer or anything, but I know it's going to talk about identity. It's going to talk about time issues. It's going to talk about what is reality and memory alteration.
It's going to have a lot of unreliable narrators.
And Hans Zimmer's doing the score, so a lot of
probably Hans Zimmer's doing
a lot of cello.
It's going to involve some timey-wimey stuff. But go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Can we talk about, because of this picture, can we talk about Wee Sexuality?
Yes, let's talk about Wee Sexuality. Thank you. Great. Thank you for bringing that up. Great question. Let's talk about Wee Sexuality for a hot minute. So Wee is cisgendered. That is something that is pretty clear. He is attracted to women. Like but it's the way that a child is attracted to women. I would say. I'm bringing my little screen closer so I can put some makeup on.
Yeah, he's much more grown up in Big Top Pee-wee.
Yeah, he's much more grown up, but I would say that like his thing isn't that he's not asexual. He's not he's not homosexual. He's not into men. He's specifically attracted to women. He likes Dottie. He likes he has this sort of a sexual appeal, I think, to some women. I'm a rebel, Dottie. I can't be held down. Like that kind of thing. He has crush. I think it's like the way he has a sexuality, the way like a child has, or like an unrealized, somebody who's not gone through puberty has like a sexuality.
Also,
sorry, go ahead, Tim.
Well, I was thinking about like by the end of the movie, I guess you could say he does like Dottie, but like early on, like I don't know, like I think maybe his sexuality kind of grew throughout the film,
Yes,
because
this is a coming of age.
He's definitely like not really interested in Dottie in that sense early on. Obviously, he's like, it's not stated, but it's pretty clear. He's like, you're my friend. I like you. Like you, Dottie.
It's like a boy who's like, not gotten into it yet. And by the end
that's
of
Elizabeth Daily, by the way. Elizabeth Daly's awesome.
And by the way, by the end of the movie, she kisses him, and he makes this. He does this like cringe thing, almost like girls gross.
Yeah.
I'm putting my headphones in
there are several moments throughout the film where I don't want to say there's sexual tension, but certainly, obviously, on one side, they definitely. I'm sorry, my cat is howling right now.
Okay.
But there's definitely, like at least from on one side of one side of the scene, there is a certain level of. I'm sorry.
Was that a cat?
Is that a cat?
Yes.
Are you guys murdering somebody?
Was that Lucas?
Lucas, blink twice if you're okay.
No, my cat. One of my cats was like at the. Okay, so my desk is maybe less than 6 feet in front of the staircase that leads into the basement, and the cat. One or both cats at the same time, they like to sit and just stand, walk back and forth at the top of the staircase, and they just like to howl into the basement.
Wow, that's not creepy at all.
It's so ridiculous. And it's just,
are you ever scared that you're living in a haunted house?
they just like to howl into it. It's really weird. I have no clue. Anyway, but yeah, you can hear it now. But yeah, so in scenes like this, there's definitely a certain level to where she's thinking like she's like thinking to herself. She might actually find that appealing. That certain level of innocence is very appealing. Yeah. I do know, like, you know, for just like, you know, some people like, you know, certain guys be like rough and tough. I don't want to say it's a kink because I feel like that's a weird thing to say. But I mean, sometimes you just like nicer. Like, yeah, an actual real non-threatening kind of guy. And he's not only that, he's not hyper masculine where he just seems like almost like he's so confident in himself where he doesn't need to. You
know what he's got, and I hate to say it like this in reference to someone who got caught publicly masturbating, but Pee-wee's got big dick energy. Pee-wee's got real big dick energy. Like, he does. He's got the energy of somebody who's just like does not give a one crap what people think about him, and his life is like led in this way that, you know, he cares about his bike. He likes the people like him. He gets along well with people, but people seem more gravitating towards Pee-wee. That people like want to know what Pee-wee's about more than he has any interest in like developing interpersonal relationships with certain people.
Yeah, he's just kind of into his simple life and routines, you know?
Yeah.
Getting up, making breakfast, going to the magic shop, you know.
Yeah.
The simple things that bring him joy early on.
Something like
yeah. Well, but because he has like his routine, he does, like you said, enjoy the simple things in life, things where he's going. He does constantly seem like he's actively doing something. He's never just lounging about. You know, he is actively trying to get his bike. He's actively trying to get a horn. He's actively trying to get new stuff for his magic tricks or whatever it may be. So he's constantly someone on a mission, on an adventure.
He's not lazy.
So, exactly. And there's something very appealing about, you know, a person that is constantly actively pursuing said thing, regardless of what it is, you know?
And we see that inspires people around him. Like the waitress decides after meeting Pee-wee that she's going to take that trip to France. Like, you know, the hitchhiker.
Is it France? Okay, France. I interpreted that she's taking a bus to Paris, Texas.
Oh, maybe.
Because then at the end of the movie, she's with a Frenchman, and they're like in a clearly European car. But yeah, you can't take a bus to Paris, obviously.
Yeah, I interpret, and not to mention, I mean, like there's Europeans in everywhere in the U.S. You know, at least that's how I interpreted it. Because, you know, like you said, if they were at an airport, that's their.
I'm just saying that he inspires her. Au revoir, Simone, that very, you know, famous line. Like he inspires people to go and be themselves if maybe they're, you know, scared to be deep down. Like the biker scene, like, you know, that whole thing, and then he wins them over by doing the tequila and
dance. A motorcycle. I used to do that dance as a kid all the time on the coffee tables around the house.
And he actually bumped his head, so that was like a real reaction to him bumping his head.
I mean, the scene where he's saving all the animals from the shop. I mean, yeah, this is a caper. This is definitely a caper that you'd imagine like the Muppets going on. The firefighters, like, you know, there's the whole thing with the, you know, the president of Warner Brothers. You know, the firefighters, they're bikers. There's the hitchhiker that, or like the guy who picks him up as a hitchhiker. There's, you know, there's all these like, you know, funny characters, weird things going on. He goes to a national landmark, you know.
You know what Tim Burton movie I kind of feel like might be like just kind of like really closely kind of inspired by it. I haven't seen it in a while, but just hearing all our conversation, and it makes me think of the movie Big Fish.
Yeah, very much. Oh, very much. Yeah.
Just because it's like about like the guy's like recounting, like it's almost like a road trip or like a journey. It is a journey movie, but it's more looking back in the past and seeing the journey his father went on. But it's kind of fantastical and kind of, you know, strange. And
and it's kind of this road trip. It's sort of about the people you meet along the way. It's the idea of these, like, how big is this story? Like, is this story just made up? Like, is this, I totally see this as a Big Fish kind of story.
But alternatively, this is also better than the Big Fish. So, hot take.
Wait, why? You mean as a movie or as a
movie? I think so.
I mean, I like this. Obviously, this is my favorite movie, so I won't argue there. But I think Big Fish is good. I haven't seen it in a while.
I think it's fine. I don't think it's actively bad or anything. It's just,
I will say Big Fish is sort of the sucker punch of the Tim Burton movies, where it's just sort of like set piece, thing after thing after thing.
Lots of visuals.
Yeah, well, it's like he's like here and he's there and he's like whatever. But I do like it because
School for Peculiar Children.
That one is also damn it, that one's the sucker punch of the Tim Burton movies. Damn it, Alex, way to call me out on it. That's the sucker punch of the Tim Burton. But this has some elements of it, because they got the World War II thing. I mean, I see Big Fish as a really lovely movie about the stories we tell ourselves, the stories we tell our children about the kind of people that we are. Whereas this is very much like the adventure of Pee-wee is just taken at face value. That's just what's going on. Whereas like Big Fish is about like the idea that stories are malleable. This may or may not have happened. This may or may not be reality. But at the end of the day, it's about the people that this man affected in his life.
I do think it's when it comes down to the story, I find that actually I just thoroughly enjoyed myself significantly more with this movie, the smaller, tighter story where, as ridiculous and fantastical as it is, it is, there is a certain, there's a certain grittiness to it as well. Everything feels dirty, if that makes sense, which I really, really appreciate, especially when it is in this kind of slightly, exaggerated, fantastical world. I do actually prefer that over, Tim Burton, where he does have like larger budgets and everything, where everything is a bit too smooth and clean looking. I think it kind of started with Big Fish, where after that, where he started getting bigger budgets, really big budgets, like $120 million budgets, everything starts looking really smooth and shiny, everything, and it kind of loses that that kind of grittiness appeal that I really, really love about a lot of his earlier films.
I really think that probably started around the Sleepy Hollow Planet of the Apes. I mean, I see Planet of the Apes as like the big. I mean, Sleepy Hollow is arguably like the Sleepy Hollow was like his first real just straight horror one. Like that was the one that was like, it wasn't anything else, it wasn't kooky, it wasn't zany, it was just straight horror. But then right after that, like Planet of the Apes, huge blockbuster movie, huge slick looking thing. It was like a real departure from that gritty griminess that you're describing of the Tim Burton like aesthetic, and became this big, this sort of Mark Wahlberg, that was the beginning of the Helena Bonham Carter era too. I mean, talk about that.
Everything did feel a little grittier because of the color choices as well. I mean, there's no bold colors anywhere, and everything is just very muted. Everything from the weather to the clothing and every production is.
Well, let's put it this way: Big Fish cost $70 million to make, but Planet of the Apes cost $100 million to make.
Jesus. Right.
So that's the big thing right there. I mean, Batman was also like it's a huge property. That's a big movie. But I don't think until we hit I think Planet of the Apes was probably the biggest one. And $70 million was again for Sleepy Hollow. So I think it's around that Sleepy Hollow time that he started getting in these just dollar bills budgets.
Well, also with Batman, superhero movies, something I remember is that superhero movies especially superhero movies in the 80s up until like maybe around Blade were almost considered a joke. I'm not saying that they were considered bad movies or anything, because Superman films and all that good stuff, they were obviously bankable, but they weren't super mainstream. I mean, they were, but they weren't. They didn't make all that much money until the surprise with Tim Burton's Batman, and then suddenly people were like starting investing a lot more consistently. Before, it was considered a huge risk.
So here's the deal. So you're absolutely right. So Batman Returns is the beginning of the budget where it's like $60 to $80 million, and before that, we're talking about something very small.
Especially in the 80s, that's a lot of money.
60 to 80. Yeah, especially in like 90s movies. But 89 Batman, that was a budget of $35 million. So we're talking about like a jump of like a huge amount of jump. And you're exactly right, because these weren't seen as like, necessarily blockbuster winners. But by the time we get Batman Returns, which is like the difference between 89 to 92, we're talking about like double or tripling the budget. Batman was very important in changing that. But in terms of that slick aesthetic look, I feel like that is something I attribute to maybe the changeover between Sleepy Hollow and Planet of the Apes. Maybe that's just like a personal viewing of it. Like that's, Planet of the Apes was 20th Century Fox and not Warner Brothers. Maybe it just had something to do with that. But like, I just feel like that was the first movie that I was like, that does not look like a Tim Burton movie. That doesn't feel like Tim Burton movie. And it doesn't like have the beats, like the comedic beats or like the sort of strange, weirdo, like, kooky beats of a Tim Burton movie. It just felt like someone else's film.
Mhm.
It seems like, honestly, you would have, like, it's almost impossible to make. I mean, like, the Planet of the Apes films are as far away from Tim Burton anything as you can get. I mean, sure, he's cool with like sci-fi films and that kind of fantasy level, but he as far as I can tell from what I remember, I don't remember him going into sci-fi ever really again.
Well, Mars Attacks was sci-fi, but Mars Attacks had a very specific kookiness.
Yeah, it
was tongue in cheek. Yeah. It had all the Burton things. It was tongue in cheek. It was campy. It was retro. It had almost like, it was like Mars Attacks was Mars Attacks as made by Ed Wood. Like
it was like a homage to the 50s.
Yeah, and Ed Wood is one of my favorite Burton ones. It also doesn't feel very Burton-y because it wasn't written by Burton. It was written by that team, Larry. I can never pronounce his last name. Larry Kalowski. They did The People versus O.J. Simpson. It
Tim,
was.
What do you think movie is? Do you think is the sucker punch for Tim Burton?
I mean, it's clearly Miss Pettigrew. Like that's.
I mean, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that movie, so I guess that's what I would probably. That seems to be makes the most sense.
I mean,
maybe Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but I just didn't really like that movie.
Yeah,
Alice in Wonderland, maybe.
Yeah, Alice in Wonderland's a good call.
He didn't do the sequel, did he?
No, he just produced it. I think he didn't. Yeah.
I mean, like if we're talking about sucker punch in terms of like it's a nonsensical, just like scene for scene, like scene by scene, and we're just in different places at different times, like with nothing really holding it together as a through line. I would say probably Miss Peregrine or maybe Alice in Wonderland in terms of, but really, and I think it's Planet of the Apes, like too. I think these are strange movies. He made strange choices. I mean, he also did Sweeney Todd, which is one of my favorite ever musical adaptations. And so, and I didn't even love Johnny Depp in that role, but I love that movie. So it just seems very weird. We're talking about a man who started with Pee-wee, who started with like, I want Paul Rubens to star in my movies, to a man who ended up being like, it's going to be Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter, and that's it. That's the only people allowed to be in our films.
You know what? If you kind of think about it, Sleepy Hollow could just be a prequel to Sweeney Todd. If you think about it,
possibly, yeah.
I mean, just think about the aesthetic and music. Sure, it's the different
genre. Storyline kind of works out.
One ends in London, the other begins. It begins in London.
Yeah,
or I mean, like, sure, he's like a scientist-ish, or I can't remember.
It might actually track.
Forensic scientist or whatever his technical job title was, where he was
in Sleepy Hollow, right? You see,
Sleepy Hollow
takes place in New York, I thought.
Oh, is it in New York? Is it in New York?
Sleepy Hollow takes place in New England area, I think, or upstate New York or somewhere.
In London for some reason, forget me.
Because it's like Burton-esque. Yeah.
Just saying. I mean, like, you're using a lot of the same tools for shaving versus like cutting people open.
Like here, let me throw another one at you. Corpse Bride is very much a Sweeney Todd. You could see Corpse Bride as a Sweeney Todd prequel because he's a fishmonger's son. He's there's a lot of stuff going on there. But I'm just saying, like, in terms of who Burton chooses to focus on or who he chooses to make his heroes, we got Paul Rubens, we've gotten Michael Keaton, like, and it's weird Michael Keaton. This is like weird Michael Keaton. Like, he was like, you know what's cool is like making this crazy actor who's playing Beetlejuice. Let's make him Batman and see how that goes. And then like as a child, I was never able to reconcile that those were the two same guys. I'm like, there's no way.
Well, he was a comedic actor. I mean,
he's a comedic actor.
That's what he was known for.
Multiplicity.
It's clear that Tim Burton was attracted to strange people, like, and Danny Elfman himself, Oingo Boingo. Like, he's attracted to character actors, you would say, like strange actors.
Well, Michael Keaton himself, scratch that. I mean, like, a lot of comedic actors in general. I mean, look at Jim Carrey. I mean, like, a lot of these really really fantastic comedic actors actually do wonderful dramatic work. Robin Williams, another example. And so, we can't always talk about how in Hollywood, if you have been in comedies for so long, clearly if anything, that makes you probably more likely to succeed doing drama because you understand timing so well. Being an actor in comedy it's obviously timing is everything. I mean, that's like it's the joke. How did you dramas? I'm sorry.
What's that joke about? Like, what comedy's all about, and then
timing. What?
Timing.
What?
Yep. So one time, me and Alex don't talk over each other. Isn't that great? we planned it out like that. So J-Dog brought up a thing. Johnny Depp might be his best muse. I would argue maybe against that. I think that Johnny Depp was a great muse for him, and then has steered him in a wrong direction, starting with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah, because I felt like early Johnny Depp, but then Johnny Depp became like
crazy,
such a character, and like obsessed with like just these caricatures of like characters, and like it's just too much. And like
I would say that Helena Bonham Carter and Winona Ryder were great muses of Tim Burton. I think that like a lot of his aesthetic, a lot of his appeal, and a lot of this sort of, we don't like really talk about the strong women characters of Tim Burton movies, but they do. They like, I mean, Lydia is a great female character. There's so many, like Helena Bonham Carter, and like everything like that she's in is great. Besides maybe again Planet of the Apes, she's fantastic. Even in Dark Shadows, like one of the ones that I specifically am like, well, she's great in that. Like, she's a strong female figure in those movies, and I think she had a lot to do with his aesthetic of what we consider the Tim Burton aesthetic. I think his two probably biggest influences actor-wise was like less Johnny Depp and more Helena Bonham Carter and Winona Ryder.
Mm-hmm. Helena Ryder, Helena Bonham Carter. Yes. She's one of those actresses. It just kind of depends on her mood, what she feels like doing. Because sometimes she whips out these really great roles where she's like, where she was like in The King's Speech, or when she's in Fight Club. Which in Fight Club, that role as Marla Singer was actually meant initially for, guess it, Reese Witherspoon.
Wow, that would have been terrible.
Oh no, they had made her dark and everything. They used the exact same like makeup and costumes and everything for her, but she had to drop out last minute for something because she ended up getting pregnant. But yeah, so I actually really love her in Cinderella. I think she's fantastic as a fairy godmother. That's a fun time. Les Mis, originally great. However, she does do it.
Les Mis, weirdly not a Tim Burton movie, even though that.
But just referring to Helena Bonham Carter, her career in particular though. Yeah. But I feel like when she's with Tim Burton, I don't like her roles as much as outside.
Interesting. Go off, girl.
Like I mentioned, a lot of the movies that I really love her in, I mentioned, and I don't like, and I personally don't like I don't like Dark Shadows. I don't like Alice in Wonderland. Sweeney Todd is good, but
the best Mrs. Lovett. We can all argue that. And like that's Patti LuPone's to take.
Yeah, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Big, like I mentioned, I'm not a big fan of Planet of the Apes. But yeah, almost like most of the movies that she's in with Tim Burton, I'm not a fan.
Interesting. That's interesting. Corpse Bride. You have big feelings about
I think it's fine. Yeah, you know, I prefer Frankenweenie significantly over Corpse Bride.
Okay.
Also, the music I prefer. So I'm not a huge fan.
Oh, NerdChronic, you must be tuning in late. She hates Big Fish.
I know. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I just am not a massive fan. I just
let me put it this way, NerdChronic. We haven't gotten to the part yet where Alex grades this film, Pee-wee's graded Big Adventure. But I will say that Alex has already said that it's a better version of Big Fish. So
yeah, which made me feel like, hopeful, because I know going into it she was despising having to watch this movie.
Yeah, you really did not want to watch it.
No, and it still does a lot of it. It's not so much I despise it. I do want to clarify. It's just his character in particular. There's a lot about him, his character in this world, that really annoys me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like his sound. It's really obnoxious. I don't like his gross obsession with his bike. I don't like his laugh. I don't like his outfit. No, it just
gross obsession with his bike.
I don't like the way he talks to people. I don't like his relationships with people. I had to constantly keep in mind that he's a child. That's why, and that's fine. But I just don't like
his gross obsession with his bike.
Yes.
Go on. Go on.
Obsession.
Why do you think it's gross? I've lost bikes before. I'm somebody who's like lost.
I understand that, but he has the ability to build another bike, to buy another bike. No, he's like, I want to travel 5,000 miles, however long, instead to find the one specific bike.
Yeah.
I mean, was
this bike given to him by a family member? Did he win it in a contest? What is the backstory of this relationship?
Well, you have to remember again that he's a child. So when you're a kid, you love things, and look at all the customizations and all the time put into that bike. I mean, he was in the process of getting a new horn. There's a lot of work in it.
I totally, absolutely. But
someone clip this out.
Obsession.
It's gross.
Maybe
Alex is gross.
Maybe it's because I personally never, as a child, I never loved something as much. At least a tangible item as much as he loves that. So I can't.
He doesn't love it more than he loved his dog. I'll put it that way. He's just like, bye, dog.
Spec.
I don't understand that thought process. Even as if I were a child, I never had that relationship with thing. Maybe a Pokemon deck, but that's it. and I sold that sucker once someone whipped out enough money.
Well, I think again, it's bringing a childlike mentality, and I don't think a lot of people in the movie understand it either. And that's what you're supposed to be getting, is that he's so childlike that people in the movie don't understand that that's what he's after.
Yeah.
There's one.
So inconsistent because of that. I'm like, he's a child, but he's not a child. Well, he's adult at the same time. He's not an adult. So
he's a childlike body. I mean, he's a man's body, but he's a childlike person. And he's got one other equal in the movie, which is Francis, his enemy, who also exists in this sort of adult childlike body situation.
He grosses me out. Like,
my dad says anything is negotiable.
Yeah, God. I love that. God, I love that character. Was it Francis Buxton?
Mark Holden, who was in Teen Wolf.
Oh yeah. What was it?
He's also in Leprechaun, the first Leprechaun movie.
Was his last name Bruxton? Is that who he is?
Buxton.
Buxton. Great name. Great name.
I mean, it's kind of a play on the fact that they are rich. I mean, kind of, they have a ton of bucks.
They have a ton of bucks. I just think, I don't know. There's movies in which the characters obsess about things that are problematic. There are a lot of movies that star men who are Ed Wood is very much the same thing. Ed Wood is about a man-child who is obsessed with something very trivial, which is making the best worst movies. They are in his mind great movies that are very obvious to the rest of the world are crap movies. But it's to him, these are this is what makes him happy. He has a glee to him. He's got this childlike glee. You can say the same thing about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, that this is a Willy Wonka character. To put aside all the creepy, Michael Jackson stuff. This is about a man obsessed with candy. It's about a man, it's about men who are obsessed, or it's about obsessions. When you think about, even though he didn't direct it, his name is on it. You think of Nightmare Before Christmas. It's about the King of Halloween obsessing about Christmas. It's about these sort of things that get under our skins and become our obsession.
But the thing is, the difference between them is that if we're going back to, like you said, King of Halloween and Nightmare Before Christmas, everyone has an understanding and everyone is in on that obsession. Same for Ed Wood. Everyone is they don't agree with that obsession, but they're all actively working with him to achieve that obsession.
Well, sort of. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean, because at the end of the day, the process is they're working on making a film. Even if you don't agree with your director as a cameraman, you're still helping him achieve his dream. So everyone is kind of on the same page to a certain extent, even if they don't individually agree on the specifics.
Okay, so let me throw something else out at you then, though. What about his obsession with wearing women's clothing in Ed Wood, which is another big part of it, which is his love of Angora, the fact that his sexuality is he's straight, but he does have this obsession with putting on women's clothing, and how outro and not okay that was in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
It's sort of about this private self. It's about what makes us happy and doing that and going towards that no matter what other people think about it.
Well, that's the thing. If his obsession is what makes him happy, That's what everyone is obsessed with. How I can achieve my individual happiness. That's not a specific happiness trying to achieve on one thing. Pee-wee's happiness is based solely on his gross obsession with his bike.
Gross. You're like a Fox News editorial.
He's effed. He's never going to be happy ever again. He's going to have nightmares every single day.
Here's a question.
He can't heal.
Here's a question. By the end of the movie, though, is he still obsessed with his bike?
Oh, great question. I think he's learned. I think that's a great question. I think he's learned to go on now.
Yeah, I don't think he's as obsessed with his bike. I think he's found appreciation in building friendships and relationships with people.
Yeah.
Which is why he's now on board with pursuing, something possibly with Dottie.
Yep. And why he's like not his friends.
He still obviously has his bike and he cares about it, but it's not like, I don't know if he sees it as part of him anymore necessarily, because he was able to experience so much without it. Mm-hmm. He knows that he doesn't necessarily need it.
I mean, this film speaks to me as somebody who
we're getting deep.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, this film speaks to me as somebody who very much as a child and as an adult has overemphasized my relationship with things over people, because things don't hurt you. Things don't have you don't have a thing where you have a fight with a thing and it leaves you. It's kind of like Chris Cooper in Adaptation, where you get obsessed with a certain, I don't know, for me, for a while it was crystals, it was adult coloring books. For me, for a while, it was bikes, where I would get obsessed with certain things and I would just go ham on it. And then one day I'd wake up and not like that thing anymore. Or but then it became about, finding communities. And now that I have a bigger community of friends and stuff, I don't feel the need to have these obsessive collections or these obsessions about getting certain things and hoarding them the way that I used to. And I think a lot of Tim Burton movies can be seen through the gaze of these are about people who are mad, they're obsessed with a certain thing, with certain objects, with certain unreal. Even Batman, he's obsessed with this status, with this idol, this icon of these bats, and he's really rich. Bruce Wayne, he's obsessed with the machines, the gadgets. He's obsessed with these things that are not other people. And the movies are about sort of the idea of pulling you back into humanity, maybe, and the idea that it's the people, not the things. Maybe.
I do want to clarify something about Batman. Batman is not obsessed with being Bruce Wayne. Batman is obsessed with being Batman.
Not. No one said he's obsessed with being Bruce Wayne. I'm saying he's obsessed with the bats and the tech.
Yeah, and that's even more. I mean, that's even more prevalent in the Burton films. I feel like.
Yeah, he's obsessed.
Especially, I mean, the bats specifically.
Yeah, he's obsessed with the bats. He's obsessed with the tech. He's obsessed. But Bruce Wayne, as opposed to in the Nolan movies, Bruce Wayne owns a lot of crazy ass stuff. Bruce Wayne owns a lot of crazy ass stuff. He owns that whole room.
That room with all the different armor and everything. Yeah,
he's got the room of different armor. He's
really with wicker people.
Yeah, he's got all that high tech gadgetry. Bruce Wayne is very much he surrounds himself by things, not people.
Well, Batman is, regardless of which version, whether it's Tim Burton's Batman or Christopher Nolan's Batman or heck any Batman, Bruce Wayne is the alter ego. Bruce Wayne is where he's faking it the entire time. And Christopher Nolan's, he's literally pretending to take a nap because he's exhausted from being Batman for 16 hours, and so he's faking it the entire time. This idea of he's faking being doing this persona, so everyone will think he's a laughing stock and he's annoying, and everyone will ignore him and whatever. He's being himself when he's Batman. So he needs Batman, the Batman persona, in order to move on. That's why he can't kill the Joker. That's the whole thing, because if he kills the Joker, then he's done. So he will have no reason to be Batman again.
Well, just bringing this back a little bit to Pee-wee. Just bringing this back a little back to Pee-wee. The idea is that Bruce Wayne and Batman are both obsessed with things. There's a really funny joke on Tom and Jeff Love Batman or Watch Batman, that podcast on Gamefully Unemployed. Tom Ryman's podcast network, where they basically just do this ongoing joke where they're watching every animated episode of Batman, and it's just that Batman would rather save a piece of artwork, a valuable piece of artwork, than a small child. Batman would rather save a bag full of money than a small child. Batman would rather save anything that is a status symbol of the wealthy. He gets more upset over the idea of a bank robbery than he does over the idea of a murder. Because Batman is, at the end of the day, whether it's Bruce Wayne or Batman, if we're talking about somebody who's out for the 1% of like, you know, he's speaking to the 1% and cares about the issues of the 1%, not the issues about like the slums of Gotham. But I think that this idea of this, I don't forget what the term is called when you're more obsessed with things and objects than you are with people or interpersonal relationships. It's definitely like a
Materialistic?
No, but beyond materialistic, because it's like to the extent that like you can't like you developed unhealthy relationships with, to your point, like your gross relationships with objects or with bikes, or let's say candy, or let's say Angora sweaters, or let's say anything that like in these movies that I think even Big Eyes is a little bit about this, like that, you know, his obsession with his art and his painting over his real world. Your relationships.
You mean her? Is that you are talking about hers?
No, the art that he was making, Walter Keane's artwork, his own artwork that he was making. In Big Eyes?
And well, because she's the artist.
Oh, she's the artist. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Right.
Oh my God, I'm totally blanking.
Because the point of the movie is that she's the artist, not him.
But isn't Christoph Waltz the?
He is pretty much her husband. They get married, and so in order for her work to be more taken seriously, because it wasn't taken seriously with the painter being a woman, suddenly they put his name attached. Suddenly they get a lot more. They get.
Oh, you're right. So yes,
it's much more famous because it, and it's like a whole thing how he has to prove that he's been painting, and she's like, and because he takes her to court saying that. After she sues him, essentially.
So switch the genders around, and we have the same thing, which is just sort of sorry. I was thinking of Walter Keane, like the name of the artist, but like the idea that like, and by the way, it's the same with this Marie Curie thing that's on on Amazon Prime right now, which is like you become obsessed with the art, or you become obsessed with the object, or you become obsessed with the thing, rather than the interpersonal relationships of people that you're hurting or helping along the way. Big whoops on that, on the Big Eyes thing. But like, you know, I think that that's sort of an under theme of, I'm trying to think of one Burton movie that doesn't fit this. Beetlejuice maybe is more about the people, the relationships. Like Beetlejuice isn't about the totems. It's about the interpersonal relationships. Edward Scissorhands. Sorry.
I always thought of it as being obsessed with life.
Yeah, I mean, the character Beetlejuice is obviously the selfish character who's only out for himself, but it is about, you know, Lydia finding herself and her happiness.
Mm-hmm. Edward Scissorhands, another one where unless, you know, like it's about his connection to her, and it's about like the fact that, you know, that's like a town against the monster. If you were doing this as sort of like a man versus nature thing, this would be like, you know, town versus monster, but that's about his connection to the reality in the world.
What about whatchamacallit, Dark Shadows?
Mm-hmm.
I can't think
that's again about family. That's community. So I would say less so.
Yeah, and also it's not like an original property.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. It's also, now that I think about it, it's also like the obsession with status. His conscious effort to regain the family status again.
If we think about the song from Nightmare Before Christmas, where he's just like, what's this? Like, and we apply it to a lot of these movies, or like, you know, like any song of Jack Skellington's, apply it to Pee Wee Herman, apply it to Batman, apply it to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, apply it to Ed Wood, and you'll start seeing like a pattern here of like these men who develop an obsession with something that's not theirs, that they want this ownership of, that is theirs and they want this ownership of, and that they're completely to the fact that they are blocking out other things that are going on, or like doing stuff that's against their best interests. Or that they're acting
in general.
Yeah, but I mean, like, yes, usually less so about objects, more so about behavior, right? I just love this idea of his gross obsession with his bike.
Like, it's ridiculous. I don't know.
I mean, that's a sweet bike.
Okay, thing is, I'm a military brat, and so pretty much growing up, I moved around a lot growing up, and so if you didn't. For me, we got rid of stuff all the time because every few years we're like, well, if we either trash it, give it away, or we have to actively pay money in order to move it. And so that conversation of how important is this item to you happened a lot. So as a result, I just became very indifferent to a lot of stuff very quickly.
Yeah.
You know?
I remember one time doing this thing where when I was in college and afterwards there was this one incident like in New York where people just kept stealing my bike. Like I kept going around campus and like trying to find it, and I would go on these manhunts that were very Pee-wee like in like their like dedication, devotion, and obsession. Like it's at a certain point it stopped being about the bike and it started just being about this like all-consuming rage that my shit kept getting stolen. But like I would go around campus, I would like take note of like the tires, which bikes were like, you know, seemed like they had just been rejiggered and retooled with. I'd gotten like
retrace your steps.
I retraced my steps. No, it was always like a bike that had been stolen. France. And there was a couple times where it was very clearly like the bike was getting stolen by the same person, because no matter how I locked it up or whatever, it was clearly like a vendetta, or at least I viewed it that way. It felt like a very personal thing that was being done to me. And like my bikes just kept, like I would buy a new bike, it would be a bad bike, it would be a good bike. It happened like 5 or 6 times over the course of 4 months in New York City. And I like locked my bikes up. So it felt like very personal. And that obsession became very real for me. And that thing where it wasn't really even about the bike itself. It was just about my inability to let go of a certain thing. Like maybe this speaks to me a little bit because I'm like, I get it. I get that desire to like go across the country to solve that mystery of the bike. But then it's really not about the bike. It's about the friends you made along the way.
Not only that, I feel like, especially in the case of Pee Wee Herman, his character, knowing as you're talking about who he is, what's going on, the bike is a very symbolic thing, just like in a lot of movies, obviously, where it's almost symbolic of his childhood. You know, that idea that, you know, I feel like everyone has that thing. You know, sometimes it's the getting over the death of a dog or just a pet or whatever whatever the item may be, where you had this item for so long, you've loved it for so long, and you kind of go on this adventure with it, and you kind of realize you didn't need it as much as you thought you did.
Exactly.
So by the end, so you kind of rely on other things in its stead. And
that's why I think it counts as a kind of, sorry, I think you're frozen again a little bit, Alex. I can't, let's see. But I would say I agree with you 100% there, that that's why it counts, I think, in my mind as a coming of age film, because it is about the real, there you go. There, you got back. It's about the acknowledgement that, like, you know, these childhood things aren't as important, like, as the community, as the people. And at the end of the day, you could probably give away the bike, or like you'd be okay with like letting the bike go. It's no longer, you realize it was never about the bike. There is no spoon. But I will say that when you go back and you reintegrate this with what Pee-wee's Playhouse was, and like the idea of Pee-wee's Playhouse, it was all like it was all sentient, like furniture and like mailboxes and stuff. So the idea that like Pee-wee would have a very personal attachment to something that's like an object totally tracks for the Pee-wee world. Maybe not for like the Tim Burton or like a world that wasn't used to knowing what Pee-wee Herman was. But in the Pee-wee Herman world, every object is basically sentient. So of course he would care about this bike.
Yeah, and he had a cool scooter in Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Yeah, what?
He had a cool scooter that he would always leave and get on in the credits of the opening credits of the show and whatnot.
So I want to ask before we go on to Dose and Hold Up, was there anything that we missed in terms of favorite characters or lines or scenes that anyone wanted to point out?
I didn't really get to talk about. I think my favorite scene is the scene out front of the house where he meets Frances and they have their interaction. I love that scene so much. I quote that scene. I always use that gif of Pee-wee laughing and falling on the ground and laughing. And there's also a really funny like YouTube like edit where it's like him laughing and then it rewinds itself and then goes and it just keeps going. It's really, for someone who doesn't love the movie, probably wouldn't love it, but I love it because I love the movie.
So you won't recommend it to me?
I mean, probably not. You'd probably be like, this is really, really annoying, but I think it's great. But I love that scene. That scene cracks me up.
Yeah. Well, actually, mine is actually very similar to yours, Tim, because my I don't really care about, you know, I didn't like have a favorite specific line or scene, but there was a moment where I was like, that's a good moment where I'm like, that feels very relatable. It was a scene where he's like riding his bike into town and he's like riding past like a bunch of the kids and stuff like that. But there's one where he's trying to do like a trick or something, ends up like flipping into like the kids' yards. And they're like, cool. Well, like they said like cool Pee-wee or something. And he's like, meant to do that. And
I meant to do that.
I was like, meant to do that. And I was like, that hurts. Everyone did that as a kid.
I would say the one that really speaks to me, I guess, is like I'm a rebel Dottie. Like I can't. I'm a loner Dottie. Yeah, I forget the exact line. I'm a loner Dottie.
A rebel. You don't want to get mixed up with a guy like me.
Love
I'm a loner Dottie. A rebel.
Yeah.
And what's funny about that line is that's later used against him when Mickey says it to him on why he doesn't want to be around Mickey, and it's just funny because he was like,
and think about what that means. Like that is him saying that is like him like basically quoting what he's heard from movies or TV shows, but also his life identity is he does see himself as a loner and a rebel who doesn't like want to have people in his life. He's don't get mixed up with the likes of me.
That's the most rebel thing ever.
But it's also like very like we think it's funny because he's so silly of a man, but he's basically just giving you his outlook on life, which is I'm alone. I'm by myself. I'm a singular person. I don't care for people. I'm a rebel. You don't want to get mixed up with me. I don't give a damn about.
Well, I mean, and he even says that later on when she offers her help to help him find a bike. He says, "I don't need you. I don't need anybody."
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Well, while talking, when you define his character, like who he is, everything he does, his adventure overall, he is very rebellious. He is. A loner and everything. He's just not the kind of, loner rebel we traditionally think of, especially by Hollywood standards that we kind of associate with those, labels.
Well, because he's friendly and he's like personable and he's like, ha. But like the thing is, at the end of the day, he knows what kind of person he is. And he's like, I'm a strange man who has strange interests. And like, I think of Vincent Price and Edward Scissorhands. I think of Edward Scissorhands like Vincent Price just alone in his tower, like making a boy for himself, or I think of Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, like alone in his factory, just like, tinkering around. It's people who don't like to be around people, like these iconoclastic, you can think of them as wacky, you can think of them as harmless, but at the end of the day, these are people that prefer the company of themselves and the company of objects rather than the company of other human beings. And I feel like that's kind of an interesting little button on it. I do want to ask. Go ahead.
I was going to say, did you guys catch the Tim Burton cameo? You know the Tim Burton cameo?
No. Where was it?
He was the bum.
No, he's the. So whenever Pee-wee's like out in the rain, and right before he goes to Madame Ruby, he gets like hassled by those like thugs in the alley. Tim Burton's the main thug that talks to him. It says, "Hey, you're new to here. We don't take kindly to strangers coming around here."
And he's like, yeah, and like, oh shit.
Guys, so I want to ask: do we think this movie holds up? I mean, does it? Or I guess, yeah. Do you think it's? What do you guys think about watching this movie today? I know, Alex, it was your first time seeing it. I really want to get your opinions on it. I mean, would you recommend this movie?
I would. I kind of put it in the same wheelhouse as like Pulp Fiction and a lot of those movies.
Oh no!
I would definitely excitedly watch it again. I don't want to see it again. Just because there's a lot of this, like, it's just his character in particular. Like I mentioned, I just find his character incredibly annoying, and I actively try not to be on my phone the entire time because I really dislike his character. I do think it's like, as far as like physical comedy, I think it's really important as well. Set production. It's we don't really a lot of. I can't think of very many directors outside of Tim Burton that have the design, the aesthetic that is so iconic, specific to that director. Yeah. And, and for that reason alone, almost, I would make it required watching for anyone that, considers themselves a cinephile. It's a pretty necessary movie. It's weird. It's creepy. And also, I just don't want to see it again. It just makes me uncomfortable. I don't like it. I'm sorry, Tim.
I know, that's fine. Like, I mean, this movie this movie is
Still likes
strange.
it better than
and,
Big
like,
Fish.
yeah, I mean, I'll take that. I mean, this movie is strange, and like, and I think like coming into it, like if you're like an adult and you see this movie for the first time, you're not gonna like. You might like enjoy it, but overall, you're gonna be like, this is just what is going on? Like, why is he acting like this? What is happening? You just like don't really understand it. But I feel like this movie, like since I've liked it since it came out, because I was born in 1984, and it was like one of the first movies I remember loving. Like, I've had a weird. Yeah, basically, I mean, I've had a weird journey with this film because, like, you know, I've always loved it, but there's like that weird period, you know, where Paul Rubens had his issues, where like, you know, it was almost like, you know, it was like you know, you're not supposed to like Paul Rubens because of you know what he did, you know, what he was and everything. And I'm so glad, you know, I mean, I still loved it throughout. I've always loved the movie, and I've always loved Pee-wee and Paul Rubens, and I'm glad he was able to like come back and had like, you know, a really nice comeback in terms of like his career. But you know, for me, I think the movie definitely holds up, and I think if people go into it like, you know, kind of like with a certain point of view, I feel like it would hold up overall. But it is a strange movie. It is a strange like idea, and you have to remember this movie existed before, you know, Pee-wee's Playhouse, before Big Top Pee-wee. So it was kind of like the first run at like this version of Pee-wee, where he was more kid friendly and more innocent, you know?
Yeah. I would say that this is not my favorite. This is not my favorite Pee-wee Herman. I mean, it's not my favorite Tim Burton movie. It is a great film. However, I believe it does belong in like the pantheon of like original concepts, original like ideas. I like later Burton a lot. I think Ed Wood is probably my favorite Tim Burton film, which is like a strange thing to say. I also really love Beetlejuice. Like, there will be later films of Burton that I love a lot. The idea that what he did here was he took like a performance artist. Like, that's what Pee-wee Herman is. He's a performance artist character. It was created by Paul Rubens. Like, it's sort of like the VideoDrew thing. Like, it's not like Paul Rubens had a lot of other characters that he was doing. He just was a performance artist who along with his group, his like performance art collective, made Pee-wee. And Tim Burton was like, I want to make this character into its own, give him his own world and give him his own universe. And I think for that reason alone, it's like very singular and unique. And I would always recommend this movie to people just because it's about like a man and his obsession.
I bought this movie. Oh man.
Yeah, this is on HBO Max and now, and so is Big Top Pee-wee. And then of course there's the much later sequel they made a couple of years ago called Pee-wee's Big Holiday with starring Joe Manganiello as a version of himself. And
have you seen that one? I have not.
I haven't watched it since it came out, but when it came out, I really liked it, and I remember it got pretty good reviews. So I mean, I really like it. I need to rewatch it though, but there was definitely moments I liked a lot. It's more akin to Pee-wee's Big Adventure than Pee-wee's Playhouse, because it's more of a road trip type story again. But I thought it was really fun, and I just love seeing the character back.
We do have a thing of so do we want to jump into we could have done a recasting for this, but I don't really think that's necessary. Pee-wee's Pee-wee. There's not really much you can do with the recasting.
Yeah, he clearly played the character a couple years ago, and it was fine. So
well, then I guess we'll just get into right next. We have a movie coming up for next week for Cinema Bias. This is one that I haven't seen. Someone was surprised that you haven't seen it, Alex. This is from a fan. So this is somebody via our Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/VideoDrew, you can come give us a couple movie suggestions. And if one of both of us haven't seen it, then we'll put it on the list and you can come on and talk to us about it. This was recommended by G Nappy, also known as I Blame Gravity, also known as Oliver. He'll be coming on and talking to us about Akira, which is a movie that I haven't seen. Have you seen it, Alex?
Me either. No, I'm not. I've actually read a handful of the graphic novels, but it has been a very long time. But I love anime. I love graphic novels. And this movie, from what I've been told, is a huge inspiration for a lot of, sci-fi in Hollywood as we know it, especially the visuals.
Neither of you guys have seen this movie?
Nope.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's a great movie. It's awesome.
Is it animated?
It's animated, yeah.
I keep getting it confused with the Wrath of God one.
It's very, very good. It's funny. I just recently thought of an interesting double feature with this movie because I feel like this movie.
Racer?
No, it's a what?
Speed Racer?
No, it's a movie. I would be surprised if anyone has really heard of. I feel like Drew, you probably have heard of it, but
right.
It's called Tetsuo the Iron Man.
Yes, I've watched Tetsuo. I love Tetsuo. That is very random because I'm not that into those like Japanese or animated movies or movies that are like about that. This is something that passed me by, and that's my own fault.
Or Tetsuo is more of just an experience. It's not really.
It's an experience. I watched it during a really weird part of my life, and I just sort of it's all hazy memories. But my God, that movie was so good.
I feel like this movie would be a good like double feature.
Tetsuo. My God.
I just want that. They did it on Joe Bob Briggs' The Last Drive-In this last season. They showed Tetsuo, which was my first time seeing it, and it was an experience. But anyways, yeah, that was my little side bet on that.
So there's a lot to dive into this movie. I haven't seen it, but I know a lot about it and how difficult and how risky it was to make. It was like one of the most expensive animated movies of the time, which especially, and it was also one of the most profitable movies in Japan when it was released. It was a huge deal.
So this is gonna be a big one for us. So I Blame Gravity is in the comments right now. So we're gonna be talking about that next week at 8 p.m. PT. And guys, if you do want to join us and you do want to come on the way that Tim's doing right now, the way that Sean Barretos has come on and talked about Wall Street, we're trying to fill in these gaps of our knowledge. So go join the Patreon, find the tier that's right for you, and come join us. So that was just sort of, if you have something you want us to watch, we're into it.
Yeah,
we're open to suggestions about what kind of movies we need to fill our brain holes with. There are so many movies that it turns out I have not seen. Most movies.
Insane.
I mean, I have some strange gaps. Like, I think two of the biggest gaps for me, like two singular films, are Lawrence of Arabia and 2001: A Space Odyssey. I haven't seen either of those movies.
Yeah.
Now Lawrence of Arabia, they show. We have a really great like independent art house theater here in Tucson, and they show Lawrence of Arabia every year in 70 millimeter. So like that's my first. I really want to experience it in that situation. The last time they did it though, it was the day after my favorite event that they do, which is the all night Screamerama, which is they just show like 7 or 8 horror movies all night, dawn to dusk, and it was the day after that, and I was like, I'm not gonna go because I'm tired. I'm gonna go home and sleep. But those are two big gaps for me, I would say. Those two movies.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about my gaps right now because I'm gearing up for a certain trivia thing that we all know and love. I don't think that talking about my gaps in knowledge, film knowledge.
I am too. But
those are two movies.
One of my ways of studying is I study my gaps. I mean, just because I haven't seen those movies, I'm fairly confident I can answer most questions on those two movies because those are two iconic movies that I just know about. I have missed questions about movies that I've loved, and I have 100% gotten questions about movies that I have never seen, and will probably never see. But that being said, guys, if you have any recommendations for movies for us, you can send it to you can go to Patreon, you can sign up. But real quick, where can people find you, Tim? Before I plug myself, I want to answer NerdChronic's question.
I saw that. There's a couple questions.
He asked what was more what was more influential in my childhood, Pee-wee or Ernest. Pee-wee was probably number one because I did love this. Obviously, this movie is my favorite movie, but I also really love Pee-wee's Playhouse and Big Top Pee-wee. But Ernest is right there with it. I mean, I love all the Ernest movies, and I love Jim Varney. Jim Varney was a treasure. So
another kind of performance artist.
That's Ernest.
Ernest Goes to Camp. Ernest does all this stuff.
Ernest Saves Christmas. Ernest Goes to Jail. Ernest Scared Stupid. He was he started off as he was on a commercial. That's how he got his start.
He's the voice of Slinky, the dog in Toy Story.
In the first two Toy Story movies.
Before he passed away.
Yeah,
he kind of talks like a redneck.
He says, you know what I mean.
Saying all these things, and I have no idea.
He saw Toy Story.
He's not clicking anything for me.
He saw Toy Story, though, right?
He's got a very signature kind of southern raspy.
Yeah,
did you see the Beverly Hills Hillbillies movie, the remake? Okay.
No,
Well, he was Jed Clampett.
Was that his last? Was that his last role?
Toy Story, and I know
Well,
what you're referring to from
no,
Slinky, this dog Slinky.
Here,
However, it's such an iconic voice where I remember it versus say Wallace or you would
not have liked him. Let me just put it that way. I can see why you missed it. This is 1990, so like his stuff was big around the early 90s. It's easy to have missed. He was also kind of a man-child like character. And there was also something a little strange about him. I put him and like Pauly Shore stuff kind of in the same category. I'm trying to bring up a picture real quick.
And he was more of an idiot,
he was an idiot. He was
like the town idiot, He
was like the Boo Radley of of the wherever he was from. Great bullet.
I can't put into words how much I detest Pauly Shore movies.
Wow.
With such an aggressive passion. I've never seen a Pauly Shore movie that I've liked ever.
Something the Weasel,
ever.
Man.
I love me some Biodome.
Oh God!
Son-in-law.
That's because it references Tucson because the biosphere is located here. Anyways,
hey, Alex, have you ever seen a Pauly Shore movie like all the way through?
I've seen 6 or 7.
I think that's all there is.
I mean, are you including movies where he wasn't like considered like because like Encino Man, he's a side character. It's not really.
Okay, so when I say Pauly Shore movies, I am referring to Pauly Shore movies that he is like in the main roles.
Yeah.
Like Biodome.
I'm just gonna pull it up real quick. Biodome,
Son-in-law, In the Army Now, Jury Duty.
I've not seen Jury Duty.
Sure.
I've seen, however,
truly the courtroom thriller.
I saw that. Oh my gosh, I forgot he was in Goofy Movie. I like it. He was in a Goofy Movie, an extremely Goofy movie. Class Act, nope. Son-in-law, nope.
You haven't seen it, or that's just like a note from you, dog.
It's just no. I mean, like no, I don't like it. He's just like also like. But also a lot of his movies where he's like in these smaller roles, I haven't seen. It's just he's
it's the Leaning Tower. What's funny is to try to read the famous lines of him in like other people's voices. Like if you're gonna do Bane doing, it's the Leaning Tower.
The leading power of cheese.
Yeah. That's funny. That was my. That's no, I feel like I can't do Pee-wee. I can't do Pee-wee.
Of course, Pee-wee was the voice of the Navigator in Flight of the Navigator.
Yes, he was. He was also in Buffy, the movie. He did
yes.
Ooh.
And he's never mind. I don't want to mention that because that's a spoiler if people haven't watched something, so I'm not going to mention that. But
I will say that he has come back in the Batman Continuum several times, both in Burton's Batman and in Gotham, the TV show.
As
Cobblepot's father.
Cobblepot, yeah.
Which is reviving the role from Batman Returns.
Yeah, because he was his father in Batman Returns, and the mother is Simone. Yeah. I was just going to say, and I was going to say Paul Rubens is also the voice of DJ Rex in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. And he used to be now he used to be in Star Tours, but now he's over at the Cantina in Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland and Disney World. So you can he's also
the voice of what is it, Lock, Shock, or Barrel.
Yeah.
Night Before Christmas. I can't tell them apart.
And he does like the live performance at like the Hollywood Bowl. Like he's done a couple of those that Danny Elfman does, and I love it. I want to see that so bad.
So I want to go back real quick before we go back to Alex, where we can find you. Or you said you were going to plug your stuff in a second, but I do want to make sure Adam Ward is okay. Let's see, Adam Ward, is this like a sign for help? What is this? What's going on here? Like, I don't know. Is that an activation phrase? Are you okay?
Also, I just want to mention that he in Gotham he plays Cobblepot's dad, the Penguin's dad. But that is not only inspired casting, but that is such perfect casting because he also looks identical to the guy that plays Oswald.
Oh yeah, well I mean like it's
Robin Lord Taylor.
Exactly. Oh yeah,
so weird.
It is weird how much he looks like Robin Lord Taylor. It is weird, but it is also funny that they were just like, that's the one thing we'll keep over from like the Burton Batman. I thought Gotham actually took a lot from the Burton Batman, like the kind of like goofiness of it, especially in like the second season up until the second to last season. But anyway, Tim, where can people find you before I go off on a Batman?
Yeah, sorry. You can find me on Twitter, tfranco84. I'm on there. Tweet some things here and there. You can find me soon in the movie trivia Schmoedown singles division, where you're going to see me apparently shock the world and take down Drew's former teammate Tom.
Maybe we'll see that.
Maybe. In all fairness, it's going to be a great match. I'm looking forward to it. I'm not nervous. I don't really go into these things nervous. I take it and I just have fun. And, you know, it's just a way for me to channel my love for movies and my passion for movie trivia that I've had since I was a little kid. So,
and nothing says not nervous than being unpromptedly telling people that you're not nervous.
I'm not nervous.
No, just because I was on John Roca's show the other day when he had Christian on. They brought me in, and that's like the first thing Roca asked me. He's like, "Are you nervous?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not." I just
Yeah. And Alex, where can people find you?
You can find me hosting a show called Cinema Bias, where we really argue and debate Schmoedown questions, really big ones. Tomorrow it's going to be actually, speaking of John Roca, it's actually going to be an outlaw-themed episode with John Roca as my co-host, and Eric Rodriguez and Dwayne Burke are going to be my competitors tomorrow. So it's going to be so much fun. It's going to be Civil War Part 2. It's going to be all that in a bag of chips. So definitely come hang out. Starts at 9:30 Central. Please do. With the Call to Action, channel on YouTube. I also do Mornings with the Outlaw every single Monday and Friday, where we kind of talk about movie news, TV news, whatever. Maybe we just kind of feel like chatting about, honestly, a lot of movie debating. Like, we have vastly different opinions on 500 Days of Summer. We went into it. So
wait, were you pro or con?
Well, our argument is whether or not the main character is a dick, and I was like, yes, he's an asshole.
Yeah. Wait, didn't you see that Joseph Gordon-Levitt retweeted out the image of it's like movie villain versus actual villain, and the movie villain?
And I was like, even the director and the star says he's an asshole. He's an asshole. It's supposed to be written as a satire for rom-coms, with a similar formula.
I think he has a gross obsession with talk about gross obsessions. He's got a gross obsession in that movie, but it's with a chick, so it's way worse.
And also his imaginary version of a chick, his fantasy of this chick, now actually what the chick feels. Okay,
much rather have Bike Guy.
I got into a real big, we had quite an argument about whether or not he's an asshole, because, she kind of led him on, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, she did not lead him on. She was very obvious. Anyway, that was the whole thing. And a lot of people in the chat disagreed with me.
Okay.
But I was like, 99% of you guys are men. The 5 people and the women in the chat agree with me. So they understand. All y'all don't. I get it. Whatever.
And is that where else can we find you?
Oh, you can find me here on Twitter.
Sweet.
And I on Call to Action Podcast on Twitter.
Sweet.
I run it.
We got a donation. Hold on, bring this up. It's gonna come up in a second. Let's see, because I'm seeing it right here. It's from Adam Ward. Much love. It's gonna come up in a second. Let me remove it for now. You can find me. Here we go. Boop. There it is. Thanks for a great show tonight. Much love. Thanks, Donka, man.
That was fun.
By next week, we should have a thing where this is going to be integrated in, and we won't have to worry about it anymore, about having to bring it on the stream and it glitching things out. Adelia says she found a way. You are joining us at my channel, so if you want to know where to find me, you can just press like and subscribe. That's because this is where I'm at. Mondays and Thursdays, I co-host VideoChronic Pop Culture Quiz with NerdChronic. So we have a movie coming up on, let's see. Yeah, we have a movie. We have another Christmas movie because we're doing Christmas in July. So we have our very last Christmas movie for this part of July. I'm not sure if we're telling yet. I'm not sure because we have a bunch of Christmas movies that we haven't gotten through. We might just do a super game. We'll see. So that's Thursday nights and Monday nights at 9 p.m. We have, sorry, this is like going a little glitchy. On Tuesdays, I'm here at Cinema Bias with Alex Mack, really filling in the gaps of my cinema knowledge. On Wednesdays, we have, so this is going to be starting up tomorrow at 4 p.m. We are doing another training session for Patreons only. So this is going to be helping me cover going through a bunch of mock games and getting ready because I'm also part of the movie trivia Schmoedown thing. People forget that, but I'm part of it. People forget that I'm just not one half of a entertaining duo. But no, I'm playing this game, and I'm in the singles tournament in a game that's coming up against Mark Yodi Riley. So I'm going to be training my butt off for that because I am nervous. I'm never going to take a competitor, and just say I'm going to definitely beat them. So I'm definitely going to be upping my game and number of study sessions we're doing. So starting at 4 p.m. tomorrow, that's for patrons. It's over Zoom call, so that's super fun. On Fridays, you can find me around 8 p.m. doing video karaoke, which is like the best part of the week. Besides on Sundays when we do In the Dark with VideoDrew, which I wasn't able to do this week because I got super sick. So that was a bummer. But we do have some fun things coming up. We have a couple fun guests that we had to sideline because of this illness. But it's an all kayfabe show, which is really great because that's the part of trivia that I really like. Is the kayfabe and not answering the movie questions. It's just creating the universe that I do with my crow host, Danny. And I just wanted to give a big shout out and say thank you to my mods. That's Danny, Sean, Adelia, and Steve. And other than that, I think that's guys. Yeah, that's it. We have some good credits to roll us out now. So say goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.